New photos from yesterday's White House press conference appear to show President Biden holding a cheat sheet, complete with notes on which reporters to call on and the questions that they will ask. The image in question shows Biden holding a piece of paper complete with LA Times reporter Courtney Sabramian's photo and credentials, as well as her questions. So this is... So I wouldn't object to him having a handy list of the reporters, their photo, even their photos, and what they just like your teacher in college like has that to take attendance. I mean, usually they're supposed to figure it out, and then I mean maybe Biden has to keep remembering it.
Even a teacher, you get more repeat players. In your class.
Questions, questions.
Yeah.
The questions.
So I think that the main issue here for Biden is that this could happen to any number of people, but because he is old and because he's had the gaffes that he's had and because so many Americans don't want him to run again chiefly because he is old, these are the kind of stories that are going to do nothing for his most vulnerable vulnerabilities, the weakest part of his public image right now. And, you know, what's the alternative for him to fumble and not be able to answer questions? I think this is what it is. But even if we found out that Trump were doing the same thing or DeSantis were doing the same thing, the implications of it wouldn't be the same.
Well, I think there would be more outrage from the mainstream media. And wait, wasn't there a Democratic controversy? Hillary Clinton getting the questions ahead of time in some debate.
That does sound familiar.
Do you know what I'm
Bernie in 2016.
It was against Bernie. This was a Bernie thing.
Yeah, I think it was it came out on the Podesta emails. I think
Bernie debate questions.
Donna Brazile under siege after giving Clinton debate question. Yeah, for sure. It's a problem. It undermines the idea that there's anything like an adversarial press so much for the Fourth Estate. He has all the time to workshop.
There's an adversarial press. They're just adversarial to some people and not others. They're not adversarial toward the Joe Bidens and Hillary Clintons of the world. They're adversarial to Republicans and certain outsiders.
Right, but there's conservative journalists that are not adversarial to their own conservative journalists. I mean, we just had the Dominion lawsuit where we found out that Fox News as a whole privately couldn't stand Trump and thought that the Stop This Deal was a lie, but publicly refused to say anything about it. And in fact, Tucker Carlson tried to sanction a reporter who did say that she thought it was a lie on the internet. So, you know, we have media problems across the board. I don't know that this is a partisan issue. And I do think this is part of why people are turning increasingly to untraditional media, maybe including Tucker Carlson. I will say, as someone who obviously exists in that world, the problem is getting the same level of access to leadership to be able to ask them the adversarial questions that you are willing to ask them. So on the left, we often give Ro Khanna credit, even if we don't like his answers. He regularly submits himself to independent left media all the time. But by contrast, AOC got a lot of flack because she did a very rare appearance on left media with David Sirota on his podcast a couple of weeks ago. And people felt like she's able to dodge questions. It's not as adversarial as they would like. They feel like she very much cherry picks who she'll go and talk to and who she won't. And that's part of why there's no accountability between left electeds and the leftists who put them in office. Yeah,
I give Democrats who are willing, and only some of them are, not very many, who are willing to go on places like Fox and actually submit themselves to questioning. To his credit, and I know you don't agree with his views very much, I don't either, Pete Buttigieg is one of those.
Sure.
Amy Klobuchar was another. Bernie Sanders has done Fox in the past. There's a willingness, and I think that's I think that reflects a sound judgment that, half the country is watching that network or conservative networks instead of the venues where you appear.
Yeah, Marianne was on Fox earlier. Last night, I think, or the night before.
RFK Jr.
RFK Jr. was on last week, of course. I do think there's a lesson to be learned because the left media is not easy on Ro Khanna. I have not been easy on Ro Khanna when he's come on my show. And
I thought you were kind of brutal to him last time we had him on this show. I'm not sure he's ever going to come back.
I'm not brutal to anyone. But he does keep coming back. And moreover, I don't think he really takes a reputational hit. The people who have the same critiques that I have are going to continue to have those critiques. The people who don't care, don't care. And I think if there's a lesson to be learned, even if you have kind of a bad interview, even if you aren't able to answer questions, even if you give your enemies ammunition, as it were, ultimately, no one interview is going to tank your entire career in the ways that I think people are afraid of. Everyone's had bad interviews, including with friendly media. And so for the sake of democracy, I would argue that they should follow Ro Khanna's example and just do more of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they ended up selling more books. Bethany Mandel did after her interview with you on this show.
You're welcome, Bethany. I do what I can.
But yeah, so, and we've talked about going back to Biden and the questions, and we've also talked about in the past how he just doesn't do that many press interviews anyway. I mean, he does them so rarely that maybe that's the reason he doesn't remember. He doesn't know whose name is goes with which face. I mean, he just doesn't do it very often.
That's fair too. Also, I'm bad with names. I'm bad with faces. But here's Biden's fundamental problem. 70% of adults said Biden, who is 80, should not run again. 70% of adults. Asked if age was a factor, 69% of them said yes. Now, you might argue Donald Trump is not that much younger than Joe Biden. That's true. But the approach has been from conservatives to juxtapose them and showcase how, I can't believe I'm saying this, Trump relatively can appear to be younger and more nimble. He dyes his hair. I don't know. It's a weird thing to have to argue.
Energy.
But obviously people are reading those men's respective ages differently. It was the same with Bernie and Biden. Mm-hmm. Bernie got a lot of criticism for being old, despite being very much in the same age cohort as Joe Biden, and not that far away from Elizabeth Warren. But it's because of his aesthetic. He doesn't care about what he looks in the same kind of way that Biden does.
I often have to look up again just how old those four people are and who's technically older than who, because you can't necessarily tell from looking at them. Most of them have a lot of energy. Biden is the one who doesn't.
Bernie is 81.
Yeah.
Biden is
He's not the old
80.
Bernie's older than Biden, right?
Yeah,
That's
by
what
a
you
year.
said. But he doesn't look it. He doesn't quite seem. He looks it. He doesn't quite seem it.
I think his energy level and stuff is much better than Biden. His cognitive there-ness is no comparison to Biden. But, he presents as, has less hair. He's got that kind of grandpa aesthetic.
Who has less hair?
Bernie.
Than Biden?
Yeah. Biden has those big white teeth. He's obviously put some work into appearing younger. In fact, Biden now looks, I would argue, younger than he did maybe 20 years ago.
Biden?
Yeah,
that's not true.
Not in terms of how he's moving and how he's talking and how he's presenting, but straight up aesthetically. If you pull up a photo from Biden in like the 90s, look at Biden from the Anita Hill trials.
That wasn't 20 years ago. That was like 35 years ago.
But he has less hair. He's done something. I mean, I'm not trying to get into the specifics of what he may or may not have done. That's not my job. But I'm saying he presents.
I thought when he was running for vice president as Barack Obama's vice president, I think he looks older than he looked then. That was in the late aughts, but. Well, that's right. That's from the Anita Hill. It's when you're losing the hair part. It's not good.
Ebbs and flows as people take different interventions to deal with it. The point I'm trying to make is that there are aesthetic differences, and then there's these temperamental differences. So you see Bernie running up escalators. You see him moving around very quickly.
I saw him running down the street one time, just running.
Yeah, he was a track star with like a 4-minute and change mile time really back when he was a kid, and that seems to have stayed with him.
Better than my mile time.
So the question is, are Democrats going to be able to convince folks that age ain't nothing but a number? Or are they going to continue to be dogged by stories like this, the subtext of which is Biden doesn't have it together enough to be president?
Yeah. That's what we'll have to see. Obviously, that kind of attack on Joe Biden was not sufficient to stop him from winning the election in 2020, which he did win, and then in the midterms where he did, his party at least, he wasn't explicitly on the ballot, but his party did way better than expected, way better than would be historically expected. Maybe the knocks on his age and his health just aren't ultimately at the day aren't enough, but maybe they'll get worse as he continues to age throughout this process for another year and change, and then onward into what could potentially be a second term for him. Yeah. So we'll have to keep following.
Trump, by the way, is 76. He'll be 77 in June. He's a Gemini.
A Gemini. What are the characteristics? I have to ask you this every time.
People like Geminis.
What are the characteristics of Geminis?
People like a Gemini. They are social. They are outgoing. They are chatty. People say that they are two-faced. But, I'm a fire sign, you're a fire sign, so we like Geminis. We get along with them very well.
Make of that what you will.
All right. Well, I think that's it for astrology, presidential astrology today.
Tomorrow on Rising, Jason Nichols and Amber Athey will be back here at the desk to bring you a very special Friday edition of the show. I will be back next week, but Brianna, you'll be on vacation, I
will
believe?
be on vacation, but I will be back in the chair a week after that, and I really look forward to you meeting our new guest host for next week.
Excellent, yes. So tune in to that. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you can find podcasts. See you next week. This was a fun one. This was a fun week in media.
Yeah, I had a good time. We had a good time.
Bye-bye.
All right, see ya.